Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Lanza, and I'm so happy to be here to present to you on staying safe from cybercrime from a personal perspective and also a business perspective. We're going to start with the personal side of things first and then get into the business side. Just a little bit about myself. I spent 20 years with the FBI. I investigated all types of crimes from cybercrime to human trafficking to terrorism. And for most of my career, though, I was involved in white-collar crime. Like, that doesn't sound just right. I investigated white-collar crime. I wasn't involved in white-collar crime myself, but a big portion of the FBI's white-collar crime program is cybercrime and identity theft prevention, which we'll talk a little bit about today too. And these topics are so crucial because it seems like the criminals are always one step ahead of us, right? And we have to prevent these things from victimizing us. And if we do that, and we can stay safe, because it's not like the FBI is running out and arresting a lot of these people that are responsible for these crimes. In fact, many of them are not even in this country, so which makes it even more difficult. So what we're talking about today is not just the crimes, but how to prevent them from happening to us and affecting us personally, our family members, and our businesses as well. Now, when it comes to prevention, sometimes the national media will call me and ask me to do television interviews. This is a screenshot of me being interviewed on CNBC. And when I go on these shows, it's always about crimes that have been committed. And my perspective on those things. But I always like to talk about, if it's something that affects individuals out there and businesses, how we can prevent those crimes from happening. So I like to slow it down a little bit and say, hey, this is what they could have done to prevent this from happening. And that's a lesson for all of us. And that's what my focus is about today. So for this section of the presentation, we're starting out with the personal side of things first. For this section, I want to talk about protecting your identity, how to stay safe from identity theft, and then cybercrime for individuals alone is such an extensive topic. I want to talk about watching out for some of the tricks the criminals use to deceive us, what to look out for, how to stay safe from those, and then I'll give you some tips on how to keep your computer safe. Now, when we get to the business side of things in the presentation, we're going to talk more about what businesses can do, and I'll give you a rundown of that agenda when we get to that point in the presentation. Now, there's multiple handouts that are available to you that are associated with this presentation, and there's two of them right here on the topic of identity theft and cybercrime. Now, these are my handouts. I'll refer to them a couple of times during the presentation. You don't actually need them to follow along the presentation, but they're a good permanent resource to have, and there's some additional ones for your business side of things as well. All right, let's get right into it. Protecting your identity. Some key things to do to keep your identity safe. First thing is to create an online Social Security account. Now, where do you do this and why do you do it? You do it at ssa.gov. It's a really easy thing to do, and you can do this at any age. It doesn't matter if you're 62 or older and are collecting benefits or want to delay benefits, or you're much younger than that. Signing up for your My Social Security account is how you interact with the Social Security Administration, and you could track your retirement benefits throughout your lifetime. It also creates basically an account that's set up with a username and password that's strong, so the criminals, if they got your Social Security number, they can't go online and have your Social Security benefits directed to their bank account. Now, this is particularly important if you're 62 or older, right? When you're eligible to collect benefits. I'm in that age range, and I don't want somebody getting my benefits, initiating those and having them sent to their bank account. You imagine I find out about that a year from now, trying to unwind all that with the Social Security Administration? Not an easy thing to do. So it's a good idea to set this up at any age, particularly if you're eligible to collect benefits. You want to set this up. That's when you can be defrauded as well. And when you set this up, it relieves you of the responsibility, or your family members, of having to answer the phone when your caller ID is tricked into thinking the number's coming from a federal agency, like the Social Security Administration. Just go to the app online and you can deal with them that way. If it really is an issue with the SSA, right, you can talk to them through the app. You don't have to answer a phone call, because there's so many people today that are using technology to spoof caller IDs, to make it look like the number's coming from a federal agency, or they act like they're with the Social Security Administration, identifying themselves and asking for personal information. People are getting tricked. They're giving up their personal information, and when that happens, their identity can be stolen. So another lesson here is don't answer the phone or don't give information to people. Of course, you can answer the phone when people call that you know, but if you don't know the number, be reluctant, and be reluctant especially to give information to anyone who's calling you asking for information, right? We don't give information to people who call us. It's only when we call people at numbers we know to be for that person or that organization. All right, so number 2, besides creating your online Social Security account, second thing you should do is to freeze your credit reports. Now, this is important to do because it prevents many forms of what's called new account fraud, or accounts that are being set up in your name without your knowledge. So how do you freeze your credit reports? Let's just say you want to freeze your credit reports. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. But there are 4 credit reporting agencies. You should know that first, right? Not just the major 3. I know everyone's heard of Equifax, of course, based on the breach they had a couple of years ago, but Experian, TransUnion, they're all big names and household names in terms of credit monitoring, credit reporting agencies. But Innovis is a smaller one. You don't want to forget about that one. So make sure you freeze that one as well. Now let me show you why freezing works so well to prevent many types of fraud. Let's say a criminal got your Social Security number. Who knows how they got it? It may be something we did. It may be something a company did. It may be an insider at a company who has our Social Security number. Maybe a doctor, a doctor's office. A lot of doctors ask for your social. I never give it to them. You don't have to give your social to a doctor, by the way. But they may lose it in a breach. All right? So then a criminal applies for a credit card using your identity. But here's the rub. They can't get the credit card if your credit reports are frozen. Right? To get a credit card, they run a credit check. But if your credit report's frozen, they can't get the credit check done, so the application gets rejected. So this is why freezing works so well to prevent many types of, again, what's called new account fraud. It prevents these accounts from being opened in your name. And by freezing your credit reports, you at least stay protected from that type of fraud. So how do you freeze your credit reports? All right, here's the handout that I mentioned earlier, one of the 2 you'll be getting associated with this program, Preventing Identity Theft. And on the second page of that handout, we'll just conveniently flip it over for you here. These are the addresses, phone numbers of the credit reporting agencies. Look, if you're going to freeze your credit reports, do it online. Believe me, it's a lot easier. Now, if you have to resort to phone calls or doing it by mail, it's just a little more cumbersome. Go ahead and do it that way. But doing it online is a little bit easier. So let's use one example. And before I do that, I should point out a couple of key things. Freezing your credit reports, they must be done independently, right? If you freeze one at Experian, don't expect them to share it with the other agencies, like fraud alerts. They do it with fraud alerts, which don't even bother with, by the way. Freezing, you have to do independently. Freezing does not affect your current credit card relationships. In fact, if your credit card company decides to raise your credit limit on your credit card and they want to check your credit first before they do that, they can do it because they have an existing relationship with you. And freezing does not affect that. All right, so it's not a hassle for your current credit card relationships or any of that stuff that's going on that you have. But it does prevent the new accounts from being opened in your name. And guess what? There's one more piece of good news here. Freezing is free. And it's free based on a law that took effect at the federal level in 2018, which makes it free to freeze your credit reports and lift the freezes when it comes time to lift them. We'll talk about lifting in a second. But let's show you how you freeze your credit reports.